In the following presentation, you'll learn wisdom, insight, perception, and how to carry yourself with class, albeit armor class. The Big Bad Dungeon invites you to come in, take notes, roll for initiative, and prepare to get schooled.
All right, today I have the distinct pleasure of interviewing one of the most talented people in the tabletop role-playing games industry, the Dungeon Master of the Black Dice Society, one of the stars of the Writing About Dragons and Shit podcast, the master of the Undisputed Academy, and the first Dungeon Master with a game on television, the very esteemed Mr. B. Dave Walters.
That is the dozens and dozens of my fans cheering there. Yeah. Excellent. Hello. Hi.
Hello. Yeah, thank you very much for being with us here today. And man, how do you run so many games?
I've shared with you off camera that at the height of my Patreon, I was running 35 to 40 games a month for about 18 months, which I don't recommend. At one point, I was running an official WotC horror stream and an official WotC comedy stream at the same time. Those are interesting times. Just one at a time, man. One at a time. Like you can't look at it like it's a bunch of things. You just look at it as one thing and then one thing and then one thing and then one thing. Yeah.
And all right, so and in that vein, like what type of game is your favorite to run? Like if you run so many of them, like what's your favorite in your, I guess, like history running games?
I've had the blessing and the honor to have you at my table, so you witnessed firsthand what I like to do. All things being equal, I like high emotions and I like high stakes. Like I like telling stories where the fate of the world or multiple worlds are in the balance, but I anything that is going to seem like it matters. Like the very first stream I ever did was level 0 characters that were chosen by the gods to get level 20 powers, Theogony of Kairos, that we did way back when.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent the first 3 episodes just building up the town and who was in it because I needed it to matter when I put them in peril. It's one thing to be like, oh, it's the baker's daughter is in trouble, and you're like, okay, versus being like, not Heather that I grew up with and was my high school sweetheart and my first kiss. Now it really matters. So I would say stakes and emotion are the things I like. I really like to do.
So when you're putting together the structure of the games that you run, like how do you normally build those things out?
So I structure things exactly like an episode of television, especially when we're streaming, but even when we're not streaming, I do it the same. Part of the reason why I don't really have a lot of home games is there's only one game I run and the camera's on or it isn't. I end up being irritated because something dope will happen and it wasn't filmed, and I'm like, now nobody's gonna know how dope that was. So I plan very carefully the beginning of adventures. Oftentimes I'll usually have a written introduction that I'll make sure that I read, that I hit the exact note that I want to hit. I have an idea of roughly where I want it to be at the halfway point and roughly where I want it to be at the end. But I pretty much never plan the second half of any adventure because I know both the dice and the players will surprise and betray you. So it starts out with painting a very clear scene, and then, or a very clear inciting incident, such as it is, and then just a lot of yes anding.
Cool. So have you ever had moments like that where like the dice have just like taught you that lesson in like in a harsh way?
Sure. Well, I wouldn't say in a harsh way because I'm not trying to win, we there was a game at the lake house, but you weren't at it. I'm 99% sure you weren't at it. No. Yeah, because you were there last year. This was earlier this year, where I had I have to be vague because it's a story that I'm still telling.
Yeah.
But I had one of the players basically ended up going 1v1 with a god. They sort of got pulled out of time. and they were trying to talk their way out of it. And I had them roll a d4, and they rolled a 2. And the god in question was basically like, if you can withstand 2 blows, I'll let you live. And hit them with Finger of Death. It just so had, they made the save, and they had some resistance to necrotic, so they lived. But I was like, the next one coming down the pipe is Meteor Swarm, and it's a wrap. Like, you are going to die, right? So the human player is really trying to figure out what to do. And I was like, I'll tell you what, let's take a little break. Everybody can get a drink. You can have some time to think. And so I go outside, and the whole table is like scrambling to try and help her figure out what to do. And even me on the inside, I kind of feel bad, because I'm like, you are about to get got the moment I come back. Like, this is a one-way trip. I gave them some time, and again, the actual human was starting to kind of like redline a little bit, because I was like, it's possible to overthink this. Let's just roll the dice and see where it goes. And she decided she was going to use divine intervention. She had 12 levels of cleric. So she had a 12% chance for this to work. And she rolled 11 on the dice. And it was like, everybody was like, ah, and I'm like, the dice giveth, and they take it. In fact, so much so, that story we ended up concluding the story a little early, because it was just a little, an hour or two.
Mm-hmm.
But it was fairly early in the evening, but it was such a perfect end cap because of the way it all went down after the divine intervention. I didn't want to be like, oh my God, that was so incredible. Everybody's in tears. Great, great, great. Anyway, here's a dragon, So, yeah. But I think that the number one evolution of this game, especially for people that have been playing as long as I have, because I'm way older than I look, is the evolution of, it used to be adversarial. It used to be the players versus the DM.
Mm-hmm.
The DM was trying to kill the players, and the players were trying to survive. The fact that it has evolved into a story that we're telling together collaboratively, I think, is the most important thing. So no matter, I'll tell you another story of the time that the dice had different plans. I had a guy, this was actually a Pathfinder game, and there was a dude whose character was a dragon slayer. That was his character concept. And of course, at level 1, you're not slaying any dragons.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the way, he got an arrow of slaying shot, which in Pathfinder, first edition Pathfinder at least, I don't know if it's still this way, is a fairly easy save. Well, first of all, the arrow slaying shot is targeted to something. So it's like slaying shot for dragons, slaying shot for giants. It's not just like a killer arrow. It's like an arrow that kills a specific kind of thing. And there's a pretty easy save. But if they miss that save, death. No saves, nothing. No, you could have 10,000 hit points. If you fail the save, you die. So somewhere along the way, I give him this arrow of slaying shot. I forget all about it. And then over a year later in like actual chronological time, might have been 18 months later, I had this huge multi-stage encounter where there was a dragon attacking a city. And I had plotted out every round. It's like the first round, it flies over and uses its breath weapon. And then it's gone for a round because it's got to turn around. And then the third round, it lands and it melees for 3 rounds. And then it leaves again and it's gone for a round. And then it comes, I had it plotted what the dragon was going to do. And we start off, I'm like, here comes the dragon. He wins initiative. He's like, I'm going to use my arrow slaying shot. And I'm like, you're going to use your what and your what now? He's like, my arrow slaying shot that I got before. And I'm like, oh, sure. Because again, the save DC was like 13. And by now we're up to like epic stuff. You know how chonka Dragon's Con is. So I'm like,
Yeah.
Sure. He rolls first action in combat, rolls natural 20 to hit the dragon. I roll the save, get a 1. As you know, my only house rules, 20 always succeeds, 1 always fails. So I'm like, round 1, move 1 of what was supposed to be this epic encounter shoots the thing out of the sky. And of course and they're all screaming. And I'm like, of course I could have been like, but there's a second dragon, and then it just would have been another fight. But that moment, they all remember. This was 10 years ago this happened. and they all remember it, and I remember it. You know what I mean? Because that was such a clutch thing. But again, I don't think of that as the dice having done something to me, even though the dice ruined my plan. The dice did something for them, which collectively mean it did it for all of us. Actually, I'll tell you a third thing. I know you at some point you want to get on with this interview, but I'm monologuing. I'll tell you the third thing. If you haven't seen the Stranger Things D&D one shot I did where I ran it for the cast, I'll do this with my hands when I'm done. So mute, and you can see, and I'll tell you when I'm finished talking. So doing a Vecna theme adventure, because of course I am. And Vecna is absolutely wrecking the whole party. Three of them are in death saves, and the only one up still is Gaiden, who's playing the cleric. And I say, okay, time out. Because one of the things they told us going into this is we had a very hard out for filming. We had exactly 2 hours. It was like, at 2 hours and 1 minute, we're turning the lights on type thing. So I knew I had to finish this. The story's almost done. Vecna's killing everybody. I'm like, time out. This is what you need to do. Use Healing Word to get up the assassin rogue, Lady Applejack, and then mark Vecna with the path to the grave. And then I tell Priya, who's playing Lady Applejack, I'm like, you attack him, and when you attack him, tell me you roll a natural 20. And the reason why I said this is I didn't want this huge big buildup, and then she rolls and it's a 3, and I'm like, Vecna kills everybody. Thank you all for tuning in. This has been Stranger Things, D&D, womp womp, you know? So I'm like, tell me that you get this 20. And when we were going into it, Netflix had asked me, is there anything you need, anything you want? And I'm like, nah, you know, D&D is pretty lightweight, but we do need a top-down camera, because at some point somebody's going to roll a clutch natural 20 and you're going to want to capture this. So I'm like, okay, come back in. We come back in. He gets her up. She rolls to attack, really rolls the 20. And if you watch the video, they all say she did it. She really did it. And I like stand up and look, and I'm like, you are the luckiest human being ever. And she kills Vecna. And it was perfectly poetic because her character, Lady Applejack, killed Vecna in the show. And it's funny because I very rarely read the comments because we've all been on the internet. But I did read the comments for this. And so many people were like, that was fake. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. I wanted to be like, it wasn't fake because I was prepared to fake it. I just had to be like, no, it wasn't. No, that really happened. No, it wasn't fake. So there you go. You can come back in. Yeah, right.
Well, I mean, actually, I just wanted to, like, I guess, ask a little bit about that experience. Like, how do you build that muscle memory for storytelling? How do you create, like, how do you learn those, like, those soft skills in order to be able to, like, to run a game on a time schedule like that? That's pretty amazing.
Well, shameless plug for the Undisputed Academy. I have 14-day DM where I will teach you how to do exactly that. Visit the undisputedacademy.com. 14-day player, 14-day DM, 14-day TTRPG designer, and 14-day writer. By the way, cut 5 years off your career to becoming a professional writer. A lot of it is reps, you know. A lot of it is reps. A lot of it is being aware that it is a skill set that you develop. I mean, I know lots of guys that have been doing it as long as I have, and they're just frozen in stone. You know, they haven't changed since the 90s. There was somebody once, and I won't name who it is, who was running a game, and his whole thing was he'd been playing since second edition, and I was like, woo, so have I. And he pulls out his DM screen, and he's got an original DM screen. He's got the one that he's been using since high school, and it's all covered in Post-it notes and yellowed and weathered. And I'm like, this dude is about to take us to church. Yes. All right, let's go. One of, if not the worst game I ever played in my life. I felt deeply betrayed. That I was like, this was trash. So, you know, you have to be aware of trying to increase your skill set and cultivate your craft, and not have it be like, oh, I learned to ride a bike when I was a kid, and, you know, now that's all there is to it.
And I mean, I guess on working on that skill set, like, what are some of the things that are just outside of gaming that you could do to like work on that skill set to get I guess like the reps in if you can't run a game every day all the time?
Anything that applies to improv acting applies to it, because improv is just about being quick on your feet. And people make a lot of a lot of a lot about the idea of yes and, but there's times, especially when you're running a game, that you have to say no but. You know, like people will try and do things that the game just does not allow for. But I will almost never just say no to a person in a thing. If they're trying to do something that the game just does not account for, because they might say something like, especially newer players, you know, I want to run into the room and I want to swing across the chandelier and I want to flip off the chandelier and I want to shoot him in the face on the way down. And I'm like, well, most systems don't allow for that. So it's like, okay, what is it that you're actually trying to accomplish? What you're actually trying to accomplish is you want to look cool and shoot the guy. That's what you actually want to accomplish. So in D&D parlance, I might break that down to, I'll give you an athletics check and then your attack roll. You know, let's see how cool you look when you do it, and then you do it, you know? Or I might give them a chance to just say something cool or describe it in a cool way that at the end of the day is still just the roll of the dice, you know? I think the biggest enemy in all of this is, I think there's two big enemies, ironically enough. The first one's self-consciousness, just being too hard on yourself, that it's like, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. Hopefully you won't mind me sharing this minor anecdote, and if so, your production overlords can edit it out. But about 2 weeks ago, you ran an adventure that I ran, and you reached out to me and you were like, I'm gonna take all these notes, and can I do this, can I do that? And you were very respectful, and I appreciate you being respectful, but I was like, my brother in Christ, it's yours now. You know, you do what you're gonna do with it, which leads directly to the second thing, because what I told you is you don't owe me anything, you just have to make sure the people at the table have a good time. And that's the second thing. I think people also, especially newer DMs, that are, you know, failed novelists in their own mind, have in their head that it's like, this is my story I'm telling you. And they can shoehorn and railroad people and not pay attention to what the table is telling you that they want. And maybe they're saying it out loud, or maybe they're just saying it with their body language of being like, you know, and seeing when different people light up, because your only job as a storyteller is to elicit an emotional response. That's the one thing you have to do. If people are nodding their head yes, or shaking their head no, or laughing or crying or you know, skeeved out, you are accomplishing your goal. Your only enemy is meh. So a part of that is the talky character has to have a chance to talk. The fighty character has to have a chance to fight. The sneaky character has to have a chance to sneak. The spotlight needs to fall on everyone. Ideally every single session. But it's like it's like 5-part harmony in a band. Everybody needs to have a solo, you know?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And if you're telling a longer story, there should be entire sessions, sometimes even story arcs, that center primarily on one person, even at the same time everybody else still having a chance to be cool in the midst of that. Like if you know, the sneaky person has to lead you all into the dungeon, the talky person still needs a chance to talk to somebody, and the fighty person still needs a chance to fight somebody, even if the overall vibe that particular episode is being sneaky, or session as it is.
Certainly one of the, I think the along those lines, one of the biggest I think things that you gave to me was this idea that like you allow people to describe what their characters are doing, or how things look to them in their own words, and that just doubles down on engagement. And I swear that was like lightning during the game,
Mm-hmm.
because I had one of the characters like I mean, it was just simple, like something as simple as like, well, what does that look like to you? And then I watched one of the players at the table like back up and stand, and I'm like, this is going to be good, and it's going to
Mm-hmm.
give me the time it's going to give me the time to, I guess, like get to my next beat.
Hmm.
Um, are there any other things that are like that? Any other kind of like little secrets that you'd like to share with our audience that are in a similar vein?
Yeah, specifically what I was telling you is one of my secret weapons is when a player does something uh or casts a spell, especially if they do something cool like a crit, that you tell me what that looks like. Um and it accomplishes two things. It increases their engagement because now they're thinking harder and they're an active participant instead of a passive one. And it removes some of your cognitive load of having to try and figure it out, especially if they give you something cool that now you can continue building on. I also say things like, you come into a room and something horrible has happened. You tell me what it looks like. Because you give them enough to know here's the vibe. If you're just like, you walk into a room, describe it. They're like, a Chuck E. Cheese, and you're like, no, it's in a dungeon. So you gotta give them. I mean, unless it's a Five Nights at Freddy's themed dungeon, that's how it starts. So give them something. It's like you walk into a room and it's gorgeous. Um, Tell me what it looks like. The other thing is, a lot of times in my descriptions, I will be intentionally vague because the person hearing it will fill in the rest. If I say it's the most beautiful woman you've ever seen in your life, everyone who just heard me thought of someone different. If I say it's a 5'9" athletic redhead, that might not be your jam at all, you know? And then you're like, oh, I mean, I guess if you're into that, I've actually taken something away rather than given it. So, um, describing more um, generally than specifically, like it is a huge cavernous room that sends a chill through your bones, is better storytelling than it is 10 by 10 foot in 17 degrees. You know, um, there's some people whose brains process data like that better, and it's fine because then you give them that data secondarily. Like you describe it as huge, cavernous, dank with water dripping from the stalactites. And after that, if somebody's going to be like, well, how many square feet is it? And you're like 120, you know?
No.
Also, you can remember that stalactites are on the ceiling, stalagmites are on the ground because you cling tight to the ceiling and mites crawl across the floor. There you go. Um, And also, shameless plug, 14-day DM. I spend 14 days teaching you all of this stuff. UndisputedAcademy.com. In fact, let me give you guys a coupon code because you're listening and we're all friends of the show. You can use code 14day50. Get 50% off any of the products because we're here amongst friends and I appreciate you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you, and I'm sure that I guess like the folks tuning in are going to I guess like want to immediately jump on that code because I mean I've gone through the I guess like the series. I did 14-day DM and
Hey,
it was absolutely fantastic. Um, so I mean,
and obviously through your own hard work, of course. But you're DMing 14-day at D&D in a castle now, and everybody has faith that you could do it, that you can sit in the big seat. In fact, everybody, I got COVID a couple of weeks ago, and this man got called up to take my seat, and they asked me, they were like, "Do you think he can do it?" I'm like, "I absolutely think he can do it. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be wonderful." But yeah,
Uh,
there we go.
well, thank you very much. And yeah, all of your, I guess like all of the advice that you gave, and certainly, I guess like the 14-day DM class was absolutely absolutely clutch, and gave me a lot of lessons I could lean back on. So when they, when it finally got time to get to the table, it was, yeah, it was all right. I could handle it. Um, so, I mean, when people like run games, a lot of times, like if you're a forever DM, you end up having to like run a game that's kind of like a love letter to the game that you always want to play. Like what's the I guess like the love letter that you always wanted to, I guess like experience play in, or what was the I guess like the love letter for the game that you I guess like got a chance to run?
Um, my actual love letter to D&D was not a game I got to run. It actually was the comic, Dungeons and Dragons: A Dark and Wish, because I
Hmm.
got to write an official comic, and that was expressly my love letter to the Forgotten Realms, expressly. Um, in terms of campaigns, I think I was the most fulfilled by the Black Dice Society because we got to do 57 episodes, I think. So we really got to go there and back again, and really spend time with those characters and those worlds and those situations and how it changed because of them and how they changed in it. Um, Besides that, I think some of the accolades, being able to be the first DM with a campaign on television, that
Yeah.
really meant a lot to me because in this day and age there's not a lot of firsts left, and getting to do that and being able to be a lot of people's first introduction to it, and get to bring it to life, that was really great. I think just something I got to experience that had nothing to do with me was the Stream of Many Eyes in 2018. I think Stream of Many Eyes was, where they built Waterdeep. They built a set for it, and so
Mhm.
um, I walked into Waterdeep. I walked into the Yawning Tavern. We did this thing where we were doing a basically like a LARP, in off the table section, and when we were doing it, they're all in the Yawning Portal and everything, and um I walk up and it, hold on one second. Now it's bothering me. I have to check my dates of this here. Yes, it was 2018. Everything's blending together.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're in the Yawning Portal, and I walk up, and Ed Greenwood is there, and he's dressed as Elminster. And I walk up, and he turns and he looks at me, and he just says, "Elminster of Shadowdale, well met." And I just like look at him for a second, and I mean, just my screensaver came up. Like I just blanked. I'm like, I'm with Elminster in the Yawning Portal. And on camera, it's maybe 5 seconds. But in my head, it's an hour and a half of me just being like, yeah, like let me go on with my dialogue. But like getting to like dive into it, and actually be a part of it, that was really incredible too.
So how did that, I mean, how did this whole journey like start for you? Where did it begin?
So I again, I've been playing since I was 13 years old. So, since dinosaurs rule the earth. And it's just something that I was into, and I began actually writing web content in 2009. I actually did like a lot of like inspirational stuff, but one of the things that I would talk about quite frequently was like how the deeper spiritual significance of things like the Avengers and Clash of the Titans and these kind of stories and like what they mean and how they matter. And that kind of got me going in the panel circuit. And one of my buddies, Damien Poitier, they get mad at me now because they say I don't tell the story accurately. So I'm telling the story as I felt at the time. Um, I introduced Damien Poitier to Jason Miller, and they both got in over at Geek and Sundry, and they both started doing a show called Foreververse. And at the time, I was still just like working for a living, going into work every day. And I was like, these sons of bitches wouldn't even know each other if not for me, you know? And they're over there, neither of them called. What the hell, you know? They both object to this story, so I'm telling you how I felt, what was in my heart. So one day, Damien calls me and he's like, I got an idea for this show called Ask Your Black Geek Friend. And I'm like, go on. And we talk and we kick some ideas around. He called me on a Wednesday. We shot the pilot that Saturday. And on Monday, Geek and Sundry told us that they wanted it. But for a lot of reasons, it didn't go up. We shot it in March. It didn't actually go up until August. So that was how I got in the door over at Geek and Sundry. And I knew that once I did that, I knew I was going to spread my infestation far and wide. Because I was like, I knew there's three things I wanted them to know. That I would always be on time and prepared, that I would always be easy to work with, and that I would always give it my all. And of course, your best looks different day to day. But I was like, if people know me for those three things, I will never want for gigs, and that has proven to be true. Um, and so I got in there, and at least initially, they knew me as the talk guy because I was on there. In that December, there was a Christmas charity event where I got to play Vampire. It was the first time Jason Carl ever ran a game on stream. It was the first time I ever played a game on stream. This would have been December of 2017. And I knew I was going to go in. I did a costume, I did a voice. I was like, I hit it as hard as I could because in acting wasn't even my background, but I was like, I comprehend this is my chance. Blew them all away, so much so that out of that, I was the only person that was in that game that ended up being a part of LA by Night when it started the next year. But when people saw that I could play, I started getting invitations for one shots. Then I got cast in We're Alive Frontier, which is where I met Anjali Bhamani, and we're actually recording this on her birthday. So shout out to the homie Anjali Bhamani. And after that, yeah, then people knew who I was and what I was capable of. And then yeah, the rest of it has just been riding the wave.
I feel like a lot of people like know you when as your character, I guess like as the Baron of the Valley. So I tell me how you found that character.
So Victor Temple, the undisputed Baron of the Valley, is me, quite frankly. I tell people all the time, if I were to become a vampire today, in 15 years, I would have Victor's life, basically. Honestly, I might do it a little faster now because I learned what I learned from playing him. And so that when we were creating those characters, we knew LA by Night expressly was designed to introduce Vampire the Masquerade to a new generation of fans. We were the commercial for V5, which we knew was coming. And I'd always loved Clan Ventru, which, you know, shout out to the homies, Clan Ventru. And where's my ring? My ring's up here somewhere, but I have my rosary. Actually, well, to make sure I put my ring back, because I took it with me to Chicago. But see, here's how my brain works. It is gonna bug me now until I find my ring, but that's all right. I have to tell you something about this box here in just a second. But Clan Venture are the business vampires, and that's what I'd always played. And in the past, Clan Venture was always represented as like basically like these sleazy stockbrokers, and I wanted them to be something else. So I knew everybody else was kind of doing like actually two things happened. I know that Vampire is a game of ennui. It is a storytelling game of personal horror. You're a monster and you don't want to be. And everybody else was really diving deep into that. And I was thinking, and we had just come off of We're Alive Frontier, which was very gripping and very depressing. And I played a character who was the reluctant leader of an unruly band of misfits that didn't listen to their detriment. And so I was like, I'm gonna not do that. Spoiler alert, that's exactly what happened. But I asked myself consciously, I'm like, what kind of vampire would actually be having a good time? And I was like, a nightclub promoter. You know, like if you work in music and clubs, you're gonna enjoy being up all night. So that was how I arrived at that. But also, I knew as a black male in America, I didn't want to advance any stereotypes, which is why Victor did not make his money as a criminal. He'd made his money because he was a smart businessman. And I did lots of crime in the context of being a vampire, but I didn't do a lot of crime in the context of just being a black man. And that was very, very important. So much so it came up a couple of times in the show even, and it was like, absolutely not, no. Now this box, this is the very first piece of merch, like literally the first unit of merch that was made with the new Ventru logo on it. And it was given to me, Jason Carl gave it to me the day that we were leaving to go to the Labyrinth of Jareth, which is this big masquerade ball that happens every year. It just happened. And I was so scared of losing it. I didn't want to leave it at Geek and Sundry. I held it in my hand the entire time. So every picture of me, I've got my arm behind my back like freaking Napoleon because I'm hiding the fact that I'm carrying this dice box and didn't want to lose it. But yeah, that was where that came from. And every decision I made was basically an outgrowth or expression of that.
I wouldn't put that down. That thing's amazing.
I love it so much. Y'all, I need you to know you don't understand the extent to which I'm gonna tear my place apart looking for my ring after this. I think it's like by my nightstand or something. I just because every other thing I took to Chicago is right back here where it's supposed to be, except my ring. So that's all right. We'll figure it out. It is gonna bug me though.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what life experiences has I have you called upon the most for, I guess, like building your games, running your games?
Oh, all of it. You know, you kind of can't separate it. I will say a lot of my stories, which again I think you've realized, deal with almost no one is irredeemable. You know, there's times, of course, you must have an implacable foe on occasion, but almost no one's irredeemable. And I always question power and question assumed authority. There was a charity game because I've been blessed to do a lot of charity games, and a campaign that I ran more than once was one of the things that happens is you show up and you just appear on a mountainside and you run into some Hyperions and some Planetars, so just like giant angels. And they're like, hey, ho, little friends. And of course, like, hey, they're angels, dope. And down at the base of the mountain is a village, and the village is full of the evil races: orcs, goblins, gnolls, hobgoblins. And they're like, hey, angels, what are you doing? And they're like, we're on the way to wipe out that evil village. And it's like, well, what did they do? Well, they're evil. And it's like, well, they must have done something. And it's like, they're evil, you know? And the players 99 times out of 100 end up fighting the angels to save the evil races, because I want them to have to question the fact that it's like the ones that are the good guys are telling you, that these people deserve to suffer just because of what they are. And it's like, it's like, I need your reptile brain to be like, wait a second. And I'm like, yeah, cute. Don't fight it. Let it in, um, I'll do stuff like that. That was why I was very, very deep in the, orc discourse and evil races.
Yeah.
And I'm glad about the changes. And I actually think some of the changes went too far, because the argument that I always made is that intelligent creatures should behave intelligently. If you've got free will, you should be able to enact it. So some orcs are going to be evil and some aren't. Some are going to be super chill, so I think the pendulum swung a little too far in the other direction, where they're all like weird bohemian hippies now. But it's funny because it never fails when I talk about it on Twitter. Like, Chad's still try and pop up and are like, that's not a thing. I'm like, this is over, you lost. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, at your table, you do what you want. And again, orcs as intelligent creatures, sure, there should be an orc Genghis Khan. Sure, there should be orc Vikings. If you want the oncoming hordes, you can have that. But it's because some of them chose to, not what they were born as. Because the issue was the brutish, evil races mysteriously all had dark skin, and the fair skin, wise, intelligent, long lived, beautiful races all were pale and blonde, you know? And that's not all right. So that is a change that I am very glad to have seen. But again, what comes along with that is what never fails is, I'm like, have you ever told a story where the elves were the assholes that were causing a problem for everybody? Probably not. Have you ever told a story where the dwarves were the ones invading? Probably not. Need to ask yourself why. So yeah.
So one thing that you did say to me really, really like stuck with me, and I just wanted to, I guess, like ask you about it as kind of a final thing. You one of the things that you I guess like you told me was um the mind cannot tell the difference between that which is experienced and that which is intensely imagined.
Mhm.
Where did you come across that idea, and how does that kind of tie into your philosophy and how you run games?
I'm not sure where I heard it eventually, or originally, because I've spent so many years reading, motivational stuff and positive visualization stuff, and The Secret and all of that. Like, I get down with that. Um, but as a fundamental reality, it is true and it is undeniable. that your brain does not know the difference between what is real and what is vividly imagined. And I can prove it again without being crass. You can think of your favorite fantasy, and your body will elicit a physiological response from you imagining it, because it doesn't know it's not real. This is why you can wake up from a dream with your heart racing, because your brain doesn't know it's not real. This is also why worry is such an insidious habit, because as you're running yourself through the grinder over things that haven't actually happened, but your brain and your body and your central nervous system are reacting like it has. So that is why these stories are so important, because again, my friends that brought down that dragon, in their minds, that's real. Like right now, that lives in the exact same place as prom, as anything else. As anytime we went to the movies or we went mountain climbing and we killed that dragon that time, like it all gets literally gets filed in the exact same place in our conscious and our subconscious, which is why I think it is such a rare and precious gift to be able to allow people to form those memories. In my aforementioned Patreon days, I had so many people, because we had the unique experience of getting to just spend so much time with those characters, because there was people that played, if I ran 40 games in a month, there was people that played 20. There's probably people that played 30. And we got to spend so much time with those characters that the human beings changed. The humans changed. People that were shy became not shy. A lot of people came out of the closet. A lot of people came out of the closet. They were just like, "Is it okay if I play this foppish Toreador?" And it's like, "Yeah, of course, sure." And then, you know, because they just came to learn things about themselves that were true when they were put in those situations. And a particularly moving experience I had, um, and this was formative to me. This and one other experience. Um, I once played with someone who their father, uh, their father was going to be in the story, and I was like, "Well, is he cool? Is he not cool? Whatever." And this person told me, "My real father is a monster, so it's important to me that my pretend father isn't." And what I took from that is every time I have to portray parents ever, unless the player expressly tells me not to or requests otherwise, I always make parents cool, always. Because again, so few people actually have that. And we had this experience where it just so happens with that story, it was like a time travel thing or something. Like they had to, the dad knew something, so they had to go back in time to before the dad died and, ask him, where'd you bury the antidote or something. Like that's not what's important. But they go back and they talk to the dad. And then afterwards, I had him say, "I love you, son. I'm proud of you," and hug the person. And the human wrote me afterwards and told me they actually got really emotional about that, and it really meant a lot to them because their real dad had never said that, and I think stuff like that, being able to give people opportunities like that. Like, yes, it is good to be able to feel powerful. It is good to be able to feel at cause in the world, because the world is constantly making us feel like we don't matter. Um, some of us have it worse than others. Minorities, women. There's some people that are representative of 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 marginalized communities that just get told more and more and more and more and more you don't matter. So getting to have what you do or don't do be important, um, is one of the most beautiful things about this particular medium, and one of the reasons why video games will never replace it completely.
Thank you very much for that, man. That was absolutely wonderful. Where can folks find your stuff? Where I guess like can they I guess like experience and enjoy your content?
I'm at B Dave Walters everywhere. Pending, I'm pre-taping a new series right now. We got 6 episodes in the can. It allegedly is going to be announced in like 2 weeks, but now I don't want to say anything because who knows. Hopefully that is out by the time this comes out. And when it comes out, I will be talking a lot about it on uh, all over the interwebs. Again, I'm B. Dave Walters everywhere. I'm still most active on the flaming trash heap that was Twitter. Again, my DMs are open. So if you have any questions about anything, you just shoot me a DM on Twitter, and I'll talk to you, see what's up. And of course, the Undisputed Academy, 14-day DM, 14-day player, 14-day writer, 14-day TTRPG creator. Again, you can use code 14day50, get 50% off. And thank you for having me on here, good sir.
Yes, thank you very much. And yeah, man, I guess, that's good.